Y'all, I'd love to welcome y'all to Ron Jones as the next speaker. Ron is an entrepreneur, an artist, and a game dev based in Atlanta, where he's quite close with the game developers community. In fact, Ron created the Indie Cluster, which is an initiative to help game devs get more opportunities so that they can complete their games. I think that warrants some clap emojis in the chat, so let's see them while we welcome Ron to the stage.
Hey there. Thank you so much for having me. So, welcome to The Bridge Between the World and a Game Developer, presented by myself, Ron Jones. Okay, so who am I? My name is Ron Jones, or Ron Jones the Artist, one of my many aliases. I like to call myself an artist, game developer, and an entrepreneur. These are titles that kind of I hold dear to and remind me of my mission and some of the things that I want to focus on doing daily. So, a little bit about my background. I was born in Queens, New York, Farmers Boulevard, and I grew up in Anderson, South Carolina. So, that was my life before I decided I wanted to be a game developer. And then when I decided, I actually moved to Atlanta to go to college at the Art Institute of Atlanta. And that's basically where I dove in to this great industry of ours. So the Art Institute of Atlanta had this curriculum for game art design, which really blew me away when I first saw it at a career fair. So came here, jumped into the bachelor program, graduated, you know, met some cool people, teachers and students and whatnot, learned some things. But the route that uh, traditional education kind of set me on wasn't really enough for me, honestly. So I always set out to make my own video games, and in that path, I ran into a number of others that wanted to do the same thing, whether it was people at game jams or some of the community here locally in Atlanta. One of which being the Georgia Game Developers Association. I really credit the GTDA for helping me get my start, kind of giving me a foundation of networking and different contacts that I was able to accumulate. Really started in college, but then kind of grew to really help me figure out what I wanted to do in this industry and really like what was needed in this space. So I would always volunteer for the GTA, going to these game events, these talks, uh, participating in every game jam I could, learning what I can. I was usually the type that was always showing up to things, but didn't really feel like I had anything to contribute, at least at first. So, fortunately, that kind of uh, fortunately that kind of wasn't the case forever. I figured out what I wanted to do as an independent game developer. And at the same time, I realized why it was so hard for people like myself to be in that space and to find that career for themselves. So I ended up developing a business plan to tackle these issues that I was having personally. And I wrapped it up in a business called the Indie Cluster. In partnership with the GDDA, we basically created a platform, a traveling booth for independent game developers. And I've been kind of taking it one step at a time ever since then, helping it grow, um, providing opportunities for individuals, as well as sharing resources. So been doing that for about 8 years now, and then several opportunities will come here and there. Still part of the local scene. I decided to be a part of the IGDA as well, which is the International Game Developers Association, the Atlanta chapter, and that was a lot of great experience. Understanding the differences between the different business types and nonprofit types, as well as like um, gathering resources from different crowds and different people. So it was definitely something that I wore proudly, And the team that we had, we really, did what we can with the time that was allotted to us. So fast forward a couple more years, I ended up getting a quote unquote day job at a larger indie game studio called Tripwire Interactive. At least at the time, they were independent. And that has been kind of um, not only provided me financial stability, which at the time did not have as an indie, but um, a great learning environment and honestly a great culture to just be a part of. So I'm really going to talk about how this whole experience, or my whole experience, my path, has created a pipeline, if you will, that I've been able to offer indies through my organization, the Indie Cluster. Okay, so the schedule for today: the problems of indies, number one, and then creating a solution for those problems. Three, strategies for creators. And four, working at a real studio. And five, adapting for the market. All right, the problems of indies. Now, as I mentioned, I started off as an indie developer myself. These are a couple of my projects that I don't like to tell people that they're they're long gone and forgotten, but if you know me for a while, you've probably seen one or two of these in the past. ABZs was one of my first games that I actually released. I was working on it since college, and it was like it was a one of those senior projects, and I was really proud of just kind of like taking a prototype and kind of completing it. Took me like 2 3 years, only because I wasn't really working on it full time, and I was still learning. It was I kind of learned Unity at the end of my college career, and then I just was dedicating my time to understanding what I could make this game. It was simply a like a button mashing game where you hit the uh, buttons, the letters in alphabetical order within a time period. So playing off that concept, that mechanic, and kind of seeing what I can do to make it sexy, make it fun, make it more interactive and engaging. So that was just really kind of like my first learning experience to like release my first title. So like I said, it took me a couple years, and it was even honestly only released like the beta version of it because what I've learned is that when you work on something for so long, you really just want to get it over with, you know. And I've learned so much since then, since I started that project, and I was just really ready to move on to the next project. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us has felt that, if not going through that right now. I commend those for continuing and focusing. And but that was really my first kind of project that I kind of went through that and understood it. A couple of my other projects up here, the one below it to the bottom left is a project I did at a game jam founded by the CCC or CDC, started by the CDC. It was a HIV awareness theme game jam, and I created this kind of top-down shooter where you play as a white blood cell, um, kind of defending the body off of this virus. Um, I stopped that project because of just time. Life kind of got in the way, and as an artist or as a creator, I really wanted to do it a certain way. Um, and because it's such an important topic, that one I had to recognize the limitations of my skill and understanding of the source. Um, so that one I put it away because I'm not. I told myself I wasn't ready for this project yet because it was going to be a lot of work, a lot of research, and I wanted to do it right. So the top right game, that was a game called Third Wheel, another game jam project, and stopped that because life got into the way, got in the way, and again another project that I think had some promises, and you know, yeah. So you see a pattern here, right? including the fourth game. This one was really something that I loved focusing on because visually it looked cool. It took or drew a lot of attention instantly. So that one, this is the game called Siege Tower. I probably worked on the longest, or at least I was sharing it the longest. I honestly didn't put that much time into it because I ran into a roadblock of using other people's uh, assets and art without their permission. So uh, that type of game, I started it just being small and fun, but then thinking about how to make this a commercial idea or product, then you're going to run into a number of issues when you're trying to do things ethically. So I only put all these up here just to kind of list some examples of things that indies go through all the time, whether you think about yourself as a small business or as an artist. Um, this, these are really kind of issues that are unique to the creative field that we have. And guaranteed, there's people out there that have kind of gone through the same things. So identifying the problems. Besides some of the things that I listed um, about my own mental health and life getting in the way and roadblocks, um, these are some of the things that we can say or that we can list and say, hey, let us get some of this so we can fix our game or finish our game, right? Big one being funding. Um, there's a number of ways that indies get funded these days. Um, the interesting thing about the industry, when I graduated college, I was 2012. The industry has changed so much then. That was what, 10 years ago? And 10 years before that, the industry has changed so much. So that was 2002. So you can only imagine there wasn't really much of a internet presence. I was like before Facebook. People did email and whatnot. I think I think Newgrounds was up by then. Yeah, play internet games. That was probably what an indie game looked like, Flash games. Um, by the time I graduated, obviously there was more of a professional scene. It was mobile. It came out and was booming. Steam was popular. Um, Steam Greenlight was a thing. Was like the thing at the time. Minecraft was small and getting huge at that point when it came out. The term indie kind of became a thing, right? It kind of started off as like a genre, and then like people were able to use that as a tag um, wherever wherever people were making games. Fast forward to a couple years, everything kind of changed again. Indie became uh, so large of a category. We You ended up needing subcategories. It couldn't just be this labeling system because honestly, like every game was indie. Every game that you didn't hear of, but you wanted to hear of, those are all indies, and it really grew to kind of being overwhelming, oversaturated, um, which is kind of a good thing and was a bad thing. Well, a good thing and a bad thing, right? But anywho, so that kind of leads to a number of different issues for the developer. Obviously, one being exposure, um, and I kind of skipped to that down to that one. But exposure for games, when thinking about how to find an audience is one thing. Also, if you're trying to make a commercially viable product, that's another audience that you really have to look for. So um, that was really what was really changing and evolving in the last 10 years. Um, and indies really needing to kind of keep up with that is almost a full-time job. You know, a lot of the developers are either solo or working in small teams and come together kind of like I did, just they want to make something cool. So a lot of the things that a lot of roadblocks that indies kind of run into are the ones that are these things that distract from the project or these business minded um, tasks, right? So one of those being, or one of the things that would help with that is resources. So developing resources. The boom of YouTube tutorials has really paved the path for new developers, um, learning different techniques, learning the engines that we all love, um, and just talking about game design. That's really is really like the start, the free resource that kind of is core to our community or has been in the last 10 years. One of the other things that I've noticed that indies really need is feedback. Not only do we need those resources, but we also need to be able to interpret, how to make our game better. And that's really hard when all people give you is just a one-star review or just say something is bad or good. Um, and I've noticed a number of people being able to go to outside of their friends and family, go to different networking events, go to whether it's a conference or a focused testing group, and really get the feedback that they kind of need, whether it's this mechanic is a little confusing, there's no tutorial, the colors are distracting from the UI. There's a number of things that when you're working on a project, you kind of get it consumed by it, and it's kind of hard to. I mean, you see all the problems, all the little, you nitpick about this isn't right or this that needs to be changed. But when you see something for so long, you kind of it just becomes kind of a blur at times. So definitely one of the things that I would call a problem. I mentioned conference attendance as one of the things that indies use to kind of um, build their audience, build their community. But there's a huge barrier of entry when it comes to traveling, when it comes to um, conference attendance, like being able to get into a conference. Um, a lot of people might not know that, there's a few conferences or there's a lot of conferences that if you just uh, apply to be a speaker, you can get in for free. Or um, there's conferences that might be down your street or in the nearest big city. These are things that we don't necessarily think about as like needed, but being able to invest into that um, can increase not only increase our like optimism or our confidence about the game that we're making, um, but like kind of get the things that we need uh, for our game, the resources or the inspiration, and obviously the networking and contacts. Um, along with starting that community that you so desperately need to build. Too many people, too many developers are in the mind frame of just build it and they'll come. But you don't want to spend 2 years working on something and then finally release it on Steam and then just kind of not really know how to market it or not really have a community or a following that is ready to just buy the game, right? I think a lot of these um, techniques and problems have been discussed numerous times in the past couple of years, which is really great. But trying to find out, um, trying to find a path of least resistance, or just like a guide, is I've always found it not as easy, as far as indie developers that are just starting, or even a little bit more experienced developers that are still trying to find their way. Because as I mentioned, the industry is ever evolving. So, all that being said, what can we do about a solution? All right, so I am the founder and CEO of the Indie Cluster. We are a platform of opportunities for independent game developers, and we've created a modular studio that kind of adapts to whatever developers may need at the time. We got our start being a traveling booth at local conferences here in Atlanta, and we've been doing that for about 8 years or so. The cluster was created as a solution Um, it was honestly created as a fix for the problem that was needed at the time, which was we needed a space where indies can kind of come together, not only have a bigger presence at this event, but also be able to network with each other. So, inspiration um, was taken from the Indie Mega Booth at the time. It was taken to the talks and conversations that were going on Twitter, and was, as I mentioned, was just filling a need that was that showed itself here in Atlanta at the local gaming convention, SiegeCon. So we've been doing that for 8 years. Started as a traveling booth, moved up to having a podcast, created a game jam, was really kind of finding our path, was getting our feet wet with doing a number of things for indies, whatever the indies needed at the time, whatever I felt like I needed at the time. Um, it was really, the idea was really an adaptable type of experience. Um, and that worked for some time. You know, we were able to partner with different schools, um, do a number of classroom talks, and that got us thinking a little bit more about teaching, a little bit more about um, promoting minority groups, um, and thinking about doing things outside of the conference. So, working a little bit more with students and working a little bit more with trying to identify the needs of indies outside of just providing a space. Um, we were able to grow to different, let's say, different conferences that wasn't just game dev focused. So more like consumer events. We kind of had the idea to go to where people are enjoying those games. They might show up for um, Call of Duty um, or um, or Street Fighter, say a DreamHack, but we would have a presence that's right there, introducing indie games and kind of reminding people that hey, indie games exist too. We kind of have great ideas. We can use your support. Um, that whole idea of kind of just being in your face. And we were able to make partnerships with some of the Fried Gaming Expo, MomoCon, Siege, and the Subsume Conference, all here in Atlanta. Um, all interesting, all interesting kind of events that do more than just games. Subsume is one that is a celebration um, of Black creatives, writers, artists, and really maintaining a presence here in Atlanta for gaming. We really wanted to make sure that if there's a big event out there, especially a creative event, we want to make sure the games have a presence. So that's kind of really been our goal. Have we branched out of the game dev scene to kind of just be a part of events or a more public-facing type of entity. Some of the teams that we've worked with have been able to just really grow and take advantage of the the tools and paths that we've laid out. Finite Reflection being one of those studios. They started off a team of two. They started off um, making games when they were in college at Georgia Tech, and came to one of their first events at Siege. And every year they just been a part. Um, Created games like Twin Cop. Um, this game right here they just released called The Gardener and the Wild Vines. Um, Really, this is a team um, that pushes the envelope on what games can be when it comes to diversity, when it comes to mechanics, when it comes to design, and they just watching them kind of grow um, has really been inspiring. So definitely wanted to give them a shout out, and you guys go check out their games. But we have a number of not necessarily success stories, I want to say, We try to provide opportunities for people to find their own success because each studio is differently. Whether your success to you is to be able to work full time on your games, whether success is to sell 100, 200 copies, whether success is to like actually make enough money to make your second game. Um, I think each developer has their own story and is searching for their own thing. So we told ourselves our goal is to um, really adapt to the needs of the developers and be able to provide resources so that no passion project will die. Strategies for creators. All right, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, um, we started growing into um, not just showing up at game events, but also we realized that meeting people where they are, whether they claim to go to these, or whether they claim to like games, or whether they think that they might know something about the game industry, the chances are not too many people do. So it's it was really a great idea to start showing up at events where we were the only game representatives there. So showing up at business conferences. This is a local Black Expo actually, and of course, as soon as kids knew that there was games there to play, our table was crowded all weekend. So, and not only does this crowding, helps keeps kids entertained and brings the parents over and whatnot, but having this kind of crowd, we look like, oh, what's going on over here? Uh, Getting a lot of attention just from that. So that already, um, it's already like a cheat to that we can take advantage to mark off a few of the problems that indies always have, right? Because imagine going to an expo like this, or a networking event, or a social club, and being the only game there. How many people you're going to be able to talk to and get feedback from um, players that don't really play games like that, compared to going to PAX West and being surrounded by hundreds of games and the being around games that people know and love when you're trying to sell your unknown indie. It's a little bit, it's a little bit more difficult. So we encourage developers to kind of look for opportunities like that, not just go to where game developers are, but also go to where people might be interested in your game. If you're building a dog walking simulator, definitely go to a vet, or definitely go to a park, any event at a park, and let people play your game. Chances are chances are half of them loves dogs and would definitely be excited about playing your game. Then you'll definitely get crucial feedback. Might even get a sale or two. So that's really the idea of just appearing at these non-gaming events and using that strategy to build your audience, to build your community. So a part of that, something that we've also been able to hack, is the presence of just being large, being in people's face, almost being drawing a crowd that like distracts individuals from walking by. It is a little intimidating. I think we've all been there, especially like if you go to the mall or whatnot. You're trying to get to the food court because you're hungry, and people are trying to spray perfume on you or asking you about, I don't know, asking you, do you want a sale on something? It's like, I'm not really here for that. I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying? So the idea of having a larger presence and really drawing a crowd, uh, it almost drops people's guards, makes people feel more safe to come to you, to understand what's going on before you even have the time to interact with them. That's kind of something we've like practiced and taken advantage of a little bit. This first image is a booth space that we have had at MomoCon this year. It was a 20 by 20 space. We had anywhere from 8 to 10 games in there, and it was really just a space that always had a crowd. We offered people to or invited people to walk through, play the different games that we had, and it was a spot that people can chill at and learn about games, play games, or watch people play some of our great games. Developers had a great amount of a great fun. The developers had a great amount of fun being able to network with each other, network with the uh, customers or the players, the conference attendees, and we were able to basically just keep collaborating and build a number of things online or that transpired after the event, like further events or any kind of online presence or any kind of bundles. Bundles obviously being kind of the same thing, just in store format form. So the Georgia Indies bundles is something that was put together, I believe it was sometime last year, um, created by a number of our uh, alumni or members that have here in Atlanta that have kind of been around the scene for some time now. So we've developed relationships and friends as friends and whatnot, and kind of come together. Or they were able to come together and say, I think it's time for a Georgia bundle. There's enough of us. We need to have this presence online. We need to make sure people know that we're here. And there's a number of games that we can make a good product. So that was the thinking behind the Indies bundle, and it was a great success. You know, it was really good, um, inspiring seeing all of those games kind of come together. Um, and um, I haven't talked to some of the developers like individually about like sales or like what did they learn from the experience. But I know sticking together usually a, 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 is usually a better learning experience than kind of jumping out there yourself and wondering why people it's hard for people to find you. So definitely keep that in mind when you are trying to sell your game, when you're trying to learn different things. Um, it's easier when you have a group or a community. Alrighty. So working at a real studio. So we developed a partnership with Tripwire Interactive. They were one of our sponsors that um, came on a few years ago to help the indie cluster kind of grow and to provide opportunities for others. And I was actually able to start working at Tripwire as a QA tester. And some of the games that I was on was Chivalry 2, um, and a number of the publishing games that Tripwire has published, or the third party games that Tripwire has been working on. So Rise of Storm Vietnam and Eastfire 2. And just really not only getting a lot of experience personally, but understanding how a business can grow, understanding how to manage teams, um, being able to see firsthand some of the decisions that are made on the back end. Uh, does it make sense to pick up games? Does it make sense to invest into third parties, into quality assurance, into a new art team, into hiring new people? Seeing all that from the inside was really helpful because I was always the entrepreneur. I'll do it myself because it's just easier that way, you know, or you would think. Um, but like really seeing what it took to kind of run a studio and actually have people working together, actually bring people together, and allow them to pay their bills. It showed me like, oh, you can enjoy this experience of making games. It can be successful enough to make the money and to hire the people and to grow. So I kind of used that experience to offer a pipeline for developers because not everybody wants to be as big as Tripwire. Um, not everybody wants to even create a studio. Some, again, people just want to make really great games. So adapting for the market. Because of my QA experience, I really got a chance to play a lot of the games that we do evaluations for publishing, um, learn the ins and outs of the QA system, and essentially why developers like really need that QA, really need that feedback. And that's something that we've honestly been able to kind of pour into the indie cluster itself, because not only do indie developers need that QA and need people outside themselves to find that or to give them that feedback, but they don't really have a budget for QA. I mean, you don't really have a budget for anything, for audio, for extra programs, for all that good stuff. But QA is definitely something that um, is needed for developers that are really trying to tackle a specific uh, product, right? So rolling that into what we do at the cluster and the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, like everything shutting down and realizing that we don't even have the experience or the impact that conferences used to give us. Um, we decided to just offer QA services via Twitch and just as private service. We started a Twitch channel to have a monthly or a weekly show where I stream every Monday to offer feedback, to offer um, bug finding, quality assurance, all of that. Do that for indies. Just hop on itch.io, check out a couple games, or I offer indie developers if uh, they would like me to play test their game live. And I think that was definitely something needed. Um, a number of the indies I talked to, nobody really does that. And whenever I'm able to offer that for people, I usually get overwhelmingly positive responses. Um, so we do that on in the public in the public's eye to kind of talk about it, act as a learning experience, but also we do it privately for developers. We've been working with Five Force Fighters for some time now. They are a game created by Kaz and Creed Studio out in Portland, and being here in Atlanta, they're not able to travel to conferences here or conferences anywhere else really to broaden their reach, right? So not only have we been exposing their game to new potential customers, we've been on the back end helping them with quality assurance, helping them with bug reports, and while they can just focus on creating the best fighting game that they can make. So not only has the um, cluster been able to kind of start out as a traveling booth and offer these QA services that I've mentioned, but we also realize that we can expand. We can offer other things like community and social media management. We started doing workshops this year, um, whether it's QA or game dev, even audio for game workshops. Really, whatever resources that we have at our availability, we really want to let students know that there's a number of ways that you can get into this industry. And providing a network, providing a list of contacts, providing a safe space where people can learn and innovate. I think that's incredibly important. Something that we've been able to do for years now, and something that's honestly has helped me as a new developer just be around others that are succeeding and doing their passion. Um, our Discord, our social media is something that we try to keep inspirational, something that we always offer people to come in and invite to engage with us. And also, we're the beta of our website now is up and running and offering like an online shared space just where not only people can collaborate on things, but people can present their things, right? Something to recreate what we do in real life at these conferences. Come to theindycluster.com, check out all these great games, maybe find out a little bit more about them. Um, these are like really simple things that a business or an entity can just like focus on doing while these game developers, these creatives are able to focus on them, focus on their game, focus on putting this impossible thing that's in their head onto paper or onto your game, your screen, your video card, your computer. Um, it's 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 as incredulous as it sounds. Um, really being a game developer. So it's interesting that not too many people or not too many businesses are able to mitigate a lot of these issues that we all deal with. Obviously, there's not much money in helping other people make money, um, but finding out how to pool these resources and to create a successful business model, I think is really the goal of the cluster. And it's definitely something that we are proud of. So, simple recap: indie developers need resources. It is incredibly hard creating a game. Not only are we dealing with uh, our own weaknesses and mental health and uh, issues and life bills, all that kind of stuff, but we're trying to create something that's never been done or seen before. So pulling together, sharing things that um, sharing whether it's videos, tutorials, information is essential because it's already out there. It's already done. Why not make that process easier to help developers access that so they can do their own thing better? Creating a one-stop shop where developers don't have to go here, go there. Um, Creating that network, that hub of information, of tools, and of great developers where it's just an environment where you want to be a part of, where you want to learn, and where you want to succeed in. Thinking outside of the marketing box, I think, is something that developers can take away from, and it's something that we practice in the cluster itself. Definitely something to share, to find, and to research how your game can stand out from others, but also how your game can interact with your life itself, whether it's um, creating the dog walking simulator, or whether it's creating a better way to read or read or type games. Those types of games have audiences outside of just people that like to play games. So wrapping all of that up to form a bridge, understanding that we can be each other's resources. We can connect to each other. We can grow and we can build our own bridge to help ourselves, help our games reach the rest of the world. And that's the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron, for that awesome talk. If y'all liked anything that Ron had to say, please share it out, tweet it, post about it on Facebook, and make sure you tag gdocExpo. But social media aside, did you know that we have a Steam sale going on right now for this event? If you did not, please go check it out. Pick up some games, see what's available.